Hi, my name is Rod Khleif, and I'm the host of the Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing podcast. And every week I interview multifamily rock stars, and we talk about how they've built incredible wealth for themselves and their families through multifamily properties. So hit the like and subscribe buttons to get notified every Monday when a new episode comes out. Let's get to it. Welcome to another edition of How to Build Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing. I'm Rod Khleif, and I am thrilled that you're here. And I am super excited at the interview that we're having today. And the gentleman's name, if you don't know him already, is Brandon Turner. Now, Brandon is the vice president and the co-host of the Bigger Pockets podcast. So the Bigger Pockets podcast is what I want my podcast to be when it grows up, okay? and I'll tell you I have, for a long time it was just Bigger Pockets and my podcast in the #1 slots and in just about across iTunes, and now it's become such a huge landscape. But Brandon is a cool guy. He's been, he's written books. He's written the book on rental property investing, how to invest in real estate. He's got an awesome book coming out that a friend of mine is co-authoring with him, that's coming out next year on multifamily investing. So we're definitely going to want to have you back on when that goes live, Brandon. And, but what I really hate about Brandon is that he lives in Hawaii, and I am so freaking jealous. Anyway, welcome to the show, brother. It's great to have you here.
Oh, thanks, man. This is an honor. I'm pumped. And
very kind of you to say that.
Yeah, I won't make you too sad, but if I turn my camera here, you would
see
be
the ocean.
Oh,
yeah, I freaking hate you, man.
I see a pretty cool background behind you, so
Yeah, well, I mean, Florida doesn't suck, but we have no mountains, And are you in which island are you on?
Maui.
So my God, freaking Kaanapali, my favorite place. Mm-hmm. Oh my God, love it. I haven't been back in a long time, and you guys have been really strong on the whole COVID protection thing.
Yeah, they're not letting anybody in. They shut down a whole state. It's crazy.
Right. Yeah, I feel bad for the the businesses that affects, but maybe we could talk about that as well. But start with your story, man. I'm really fascinated. I'm really interested myself to hear your story because you guys have done such amazing things, with your forum. But tell us how you got started in this business, man.
Sure, man. So I got started actually from John Grisham. You remember John Grisham, the author of the Firm?
Of course.
So I don't know the guy, but I was reading his book, and I was gonna go to law school. That was my plan. I got a history degree in college, and I was like, you can't really do anything with a history degree in college unless you go to law school or become a teacher. So I was going to go to law school. I started studying for the LSAT. I took the LSAT. I started applying to law schools. And then I read The Firm from John Grisham. And the whole thing was about how horrible it is being a lawyer. And then I read 5 other John Grisham books, and everyone was like, being a lawyer is horrible. You work 80, 90 hours a week for 30 years just to retire wealthy when you're too old to enjoy it. And you meanwhile, lose your family and, getting
That's really funny.
Right. And I was like, oh, that doesn't sound good at all. It's just, there's a part of my soul was screaming that's not right. That's not where I'm supposed to be. So I started kind of digging around. And at that time, I needed a place to live. So I was looking for a rental, and I asked a friend of mine I asked my friend's sister, who was a real estate agent. I said, hey, do you know any rentals? You're a real estate person. I didn't know anything about real estate. Do you know any rentals? And she said, why would you rent? You can buy cheaper than you can rent here. And I was like, I couldn't qualify.
Where were you living at the time?
I was in Western Washington, 2 hours south of Seattle. So kind of a small town there, cheaper prices. And she said, you can rent cheaper than you could, or buy cheaper than you rent. And I'm like, there's no way, one, that's true. And then 2, there's no way I could get a mortgage. I mean, here I'm making $8.75 at Cold Stone Creamery.
No kidding.
Yep,
Wow.
making ice cream for people. And
what year was this, buddy?
2006 would have been when I got, when I started pursuing it. 2007 is when I closed on this property. Wow. And so, of course, remember 2007, right? So I called the lender that she suggests. Yep.
Sure. Can you breathe? Yeah, you got a mortgage, exactly. 200 grand. How much you need?
Exactly what that was. It was, so what's your credit like? I got no credit. What's your income like? I got no income.
No issue.
Yeah, nothing.
No issue.
Yeah, no problem. We're just gonna write down here that you make $500,000 a year and it's a no doc loan. So I get this qualified for $500,000,
wow.
Which then I didn't spend. I grew up with a garage sale mom who always said, buy the cheapest, you can buy. So cheapest house on the market was $89,000. It was a 4-bedroom, 1-bath, little crappy house that needed to be redone. So I bought it and moved in and then just remodeled it. I bought a book from Home Depot, 1, 2, 3 Home Improvement. I still have it today. And I was like, here's what carpet is. And I didn't know what anything was, nothing. Anyway, I remodeled the house. I made 20 grand. I sold that a year later. So I was doing the whole law school thing, applying during this year. and studying for the LSAT. And then I was like, at the end of it, I'm reading John Grisham and I'm thinking, I made $20,000 on a house, and it was a blast. It was so much fun. And I thought, why would I go to law school where I have to work so many more hours just to make roughly what I made the first year, doing that. So I jumped into real estate instead. Told my parents, screw law school. I'm going to be a real estate investor. And I think they cried.
No kidding. That's freaking awesome. So then you just did flips. Is that the business you did, wholesaling? What
I started flipping. So it started with what I call house hacking, right? So I was homeless then because I sold my house and I had to go somewhere, and I was living with my in-laws for a few months while I was trying to figure that out. And I bought a duplex, lived in half of it, rented the other half out. Mm-hmm. And I remember, I still remember the day, my tenant, I met him in the driveway. It was two separate houses on one lot. There's a driveway that connected them, this little dirt driveway in a really rough area. And I lived in the alley. My house was literally 2 inches off the alley that drugs were done right there. But
I own lots of houses like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I'm living in this little house. I go up to meet my tenant, who's a friend of mine, which is a terrible idea to rent to friends, but I didn't know that at the time. So I rent to this friend, and he comes over and he gives me $650 in cash for rent. And don't take cash, don't take rent in cash either.
It's also a no-no, right?
Exactly. Yeah. But I didn't know. So I take this money though, and I'm looking at it and I'm holding it. And all of a sudden I realize, wait, my mortgage is $600 a month, and or a little over 600, and I'm $650. I'm living for free. This is amazing. And I thought, well, what if I did more of that? What if I had more of these little rentals? And so I started really reading real estate books, which got me into flipping. Because I didn't have any money to buy rentals. So I thought, well, if I flip houses, I can make a bunch of money. This is 07, 08, 09, 10, 11, 12, right? So the market's just falling. I think prices dropped by 50% in that county. And I just would flip houses on the way down. And of course, they don't sell because nobody's buying. So I ended up refinancing some of them, finding some other creative ways. I ended up owning about a half a dozen houses over the first few years as rentals. And I realized I had a knack for it. And so I just kept buying rentals and kind of slowed down the flipping.
No kidding. So it was all single and smaller multi that you were doing. So that's awesome. I mean, that's how I started too. I mean, you don't know my story, but I've owned 2,000 houses that I rented long term in multiple states. But my question, so how did Bigger Pockets come about? I'm fascinated to hear that story too, just because we're in the same business. So share that with me if you don't mind.
Yeah. So cheers. A lot of people think I started Bigger Pockets back in the day. In reality, I came on later. Josh Dorkin founded it in his basement. True story, actually. Bigger Pockets was originally founded not as a real estate investing website. What would you guess the name Bigger Pockets was actually originally for?
Stock market or some other financial thing?
It's what I would guess as well. You know what it actually was? It was for actors to be able to make more money to get acting gigs.
Wow.
So it was an acting site because Josh was pursuing acting, but it didn't go anywhere within a few months. So he pivoted and he was getting into real estate. So he started this little forum called Bigger Pockets. Then I found Bigger Pockets early on because I remember early my parents, it wasn't just my parents, it was everybody was saying, you shouldn't do real estate. It's a terrible idea. And I think it was my dad said, well, what are you going to do? He asked the question, what are you going to do if tenants don't pay rent? I said, I don't know. I have no idea. And so I went online and I typed in what to do when tenants don't pay rent. And I found this little tiny forum called Bigger Pockets. And that's I found BP. Yeah.
So it was a forum. It wasn't even a podcast.
It wasn't even a podcast.
It was just online blog sort of a thing. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. It wasn't even, it was literally just a Q&A forum. And I was one of the first members to join this.
And this was, what year was that? The forum that you found the forum?
08, I think, 07, 08.
So everything's crashing. So I want to flag something you just said. People, guys, we are headed for some pain in this country. To think otherwise is naive. And that mindset and that framework, you're going to hear from lots of people as this thing starts to crash. I don't want to do real estate. Good God, it's horrible. And then the media will say real estate will never come back. It's going to be like this for 10 years. And you've just got to recognize that's going to happen, be ready for it, and not be influenced by it, because you'll miss out on incredible opportunity. You tell me if you agree with me, Brandon. 100%. I think there are incredible opportunities coming around the corner here.
Yeah, 100%. I tell people this all the time. It's kind of like, you ever play baseball as a kid, or maybe older? You play So you play baseball. You walk up to the plate and you grab a bunch of bats to practice swing. You have 4 or 5 bats at one time. You're swinging them and they're really heavy. And then when you step up to the plate, you drop all the bats but one. And now that one feels really light. In actual professional baseball, I think they call it a donut. It's a big heavy weight they put on the bat, right? So the idea is you get used to swinging heavy and then the light feels easier. So what I encourage people is to run toward hardness, difficulty, like that. Like if the market's going to crash, good, get good during that crash. If right now it's really competitive, get good right now while it's competitive to find real estate. Because then when the options are out there, that's when you're going to be able to just knock home run out of, yeah, you're going to kill it.
Yeah, kill it. Yeah, and I love how you just described that, because I will tell you, some of the biggest companies in history were born and grown in depressions, in tough times. And, I hope it's not as bad as I think it's going to be. I think it's going to be really bad. I think worse than 08 and 09, but let's hope it's not. But if it is, probably the greatest transfer of wealth in our lifetimes is going to happen. And so, if you're going to learn the single family business, for God's sake, start listening to Bigger Pockets if you haven't already bumped across it. But so anyway, back to your story. So you went in there, and then you found the blog, and you got connected with Josh. And then at what point did you guys start the podcast?
Yeah, so that went on for so I found it 08.
Okay.
So then Josh was still by himself for 9, 10, 11, 12.
Wow.
Kind of building the site. Yeah, it was just him, just kind of working on it. And at that point, like after a few years, I was doing real estate. I started volunteer writing. I started writing blog posts for Bigger Pockets, and that led me to just become friends with Josh. And so I think it was 2000 and let's see, we're coming up on 8 years here in a couple months. So was that 2013? It must have been January 2013 is when we launched the podcast, I believe.
No kidding.
And we did that just like Josh is actually, what he did is he put out his Facebook. He said, I'm looking for someone to help me manage editing blog posts. And I was like, well, I'm already writing blog posts. I said, I can help you. And so me and him started talking, and I started editing blog posts. And then I started doing a little bit more for him and a little bit more for him. And then finally he was like, well, do you just want to work here? And at the time I had owned like roughly 30 units. I owned a 24 unit apartment building. And I had a bunch of other little things. And I was making about $3,000 a month in cash flow, and I had quit my job at that point. I had a job at a bank for a little while in there. I quit that, and I was essentially like, low income retired. I like to say, it's
right.
I could live in a low income area on $3,000 a month just fine. My wife was working at Starbucks, and we could survive. So I was like, yeah, I'll do it. So I came on board at Bigger Pockets, and the first thing I said was I'd been listening to podcasts, and I was like, we should start a podcast, and we talked about
the rest is history.
Yeah. We had a goal within 3 years. We wanted to be in the top 100 of business shows on iTunes. And then the first week we hit, I don't know, whatever, number 5.
And listen, it was for the longest time, it was you guys and me at the head of the business section, head of the education section. And then iTunes did this thing where they knocked, I don't know if they did it to you, but we had too many descriptors in the description. So they literally knocked me off iTunes, and I lost all of that ranking. But it's still, I still feel good, because if you type in real estate, it's you and I in the number one, number 2 slots there. But you guys have done such an incredible job with that podcast. And guys, just to, if they've created this forum that is just such an incredible resource, educational resource to go in, and there's lots of threads and people start conversations, and they've just done a wonderful job with it. It's very reasonable. So definitely give it my strongest endorsement, and I know that, you are moving more into the multifamily space. I know you're doing mobile home parks now with our friend Brian, and you're going to be writing that book on multifamily investing. Talk about that book for a second. Let's pre-frame that. Get people excited about it.
Sure, man. Yeah. So I got started with the small multis, right? I got the duplex, I bought triplexes, fourplexes, I bought a 5plex. I got a 24 unit, and that world is very different than like the big stuff that you do, right? Like, or like the stuff that even now we're getting into, the 100, 200 unit.
Right.
And so Brian and I were just talking, Brian Murray, he wrote Crushing It in Apartments and Commercial Real Estate a few years back. And
by the way, stop. Guys, that's an awesome book. Let me give a shout out. I've had Brian on the show. It's Brian Murray, Crushing It. Is it Crushing It Multifamily Real Estate?
Yeah, it's like apartments and commercial or something like that. Yeah, I always get
it. Awesome book, guys. So that's a great one you should have as well. Anyway, please continue. I just wanted to give him a shout out. Yeah. What is it?
Yeah. Crushing It in Apartments and Commercial Real Estate.
There you go. Crushing It in Apartments and Commercial Real Estate. Get the book. Trust me. I wouldn't, I don't endorse much, but that is an awesome book. All right. Please continue.
Yeah. So Brian and I were just talking about how and I was saying I felt like there was kind of a lack of information out there for that small to medium sized apartments, like how to buy the duplex. There's a couple of really good books I've read, but they're pretty short. And so I thought, well, what I did with the rental property investing book that I wrote, 5 years ago, is I just made it like as exhaustive as I possibly could. And so I thought maybe I'll do the same thing. But then Brian said, like, he's like, well, I love the idea. He's like, but I really want to go more in depth on the syndication and how to do the big apartments. Like, and so we said, well, what if we just wrote a 2-part book and we had a volume 1 and volume 2? So that's what we did. He wrote the second, most of the second. I wrote most of the first. We swapped a little bit in there.
He bemoaned it, man. He says, like, dude, I'm writing every single night because he's in my multifamily boardroom mastermind, and we talked about it, and and just how much work he's put into it. But he's a great writer, and I know you are as well. So we're really looking forward to that book, or that series of 2 books rather than love it.
The fun thing about book writing too is, like, when you do it with a partner like that, or you have even not even a partner, just somebody else writing a book also. You, like, every day we'd write how many words we wrote in a Google document, like a sheet.
You got some accountability.
So it's accountability and competition, right? Like, there was like this continual, like, I don't think Brian missed a single day in like 80 or 90 days straight.
Wow.
Like, I missed a couple, but like he didn't miss any. Like, it was solid.
See, I've got 2 editions. I wrote a book, it took me freaking years to write, and I've got two that have been close to being ready. When I tell you they've been close to being ready for 3 years, they've been close to being ready for 3 years because I don't have an accountability partner. And so you guys will get it done because you've got each other to. I love it. So let me ask you this, man. You know, it's obvious that, you read The Firm and you were like, oh my God, this is how law firms operate. I'm not going to do that. You are very driven by lifestyle. And I so admire that because, I so want more of that in my life and spend more time with my beautiful wife and not be working as hard as I'm working. And she tells me all the time, I work way too hard. Talk about that a little bit. I mean, you moved to Hawaii. I mean, good Lord, it doesn't get any better than that. Talk about what drove that, and, just give us a little insight into that part of your life and how important that is.
Yeah, I mean, it is all important. Like, lifestyle is what drove everything. I mean, even like getting into real estate was because I wanted a lifestyle where I would be there for my kids. I want to be there for every ball game, every dance recital, everything, right? I didn't want to retire when I'm 70 to be able to enjoy my great grandkids.
How old are your kids now? I mean, I know I tried to get you on the podcast a year ago and you were about to have a baby and you're like, no, I got to wait. And so, I gave you lots of space and here we are just about a year later.
Yep. Yeah. My boy is 10 and a half months old right now. Yeah. My daughter's 4. And so now I get to, and I still work more than I want to. I mean, and when I say that, the people are going to laugh at this because, like, I track my hours on how much I work. I have actual goals set for how many hours I work. And my goal is 20 hours a week across all businesses. That means Bigger Pockets. That means real estate investing. That means my personal, my fund, all of that stuff, 20 hours a week max. Now I usually like 25, but like, because I track it, I'm more likely to hit it.
Well, not only that, though, you're probably a hell of a lot more efficient when you're actually working because you're tracking your time. Because you're going to execute. You're not going to be dillying around on news or Facebook or some other BS that distracts you. You're probably a lot more focused. Is that accurate?
That's 100% accurate.
Oh, I love that, man. I love. You know what? I may steal that idea. I absolutely love that idea.
Yeah, I even do every Sunday night. I sit down and I did this today. Tuesday, right? So 2 days ago or whatever. So I sat down on Sunday night and I looked at my week on my calendar, like on my phone. I looked at my whole week. I actually wrote out the number of hours I would have to work this week. And it was like 28 hours. And I said, okay, that's not going to work. So what do I got to take out this week? And so I went back and actually removed a bunch of stuff to make sure that, like, because if you just let things happen, like, your schedule will just fill up, right? Parkinson's law says work expands to fill the time allotted for it. So if you just give it a smaller window, like, you have to fit it within this time, amazing, you get the same work done. And sometimes it gets done better. Yeah. Cause you're just more and more focused and driven. Yeah.
Wow. I am absolutely going to remember that because you're absolutely right. I mean, I've all of a sudden I'm like, oh Christ, I'm being interviewed tomorrow. And it's the only thing I've got going that day and screw up my whole day, no, I love it. So let's talk for a minute. We talked briefly before we started recording about goal setting. And I know that you guys talk about it on your show, but more importantly, you implement it in your companies. Can you let's drill down on that a little bit? Cause that's a big topic for me too. At my events, that's one of the first things we do. Cause how the heck are you ever going to get anything if you don't know what it is with clarity? And so talk about how you guys implement it. Cause I was fascinated when you started to talk about it earlier.
Sure. Yeah. So a lot of this started, I've always been a big vision guy. I'm kind of the visionary of companies. Like, I like the idea stuff, but I'm a big believer in starting with the end in mind and seeing the whole thing. I know where I want to head. And for me, at least with the multifamily space right now, it started. I read a book called it's called Vivid Vision by Cameron Herold.
Oh yeah, fantastic! In fact, I used his model for my website. I have a Vivid Vision inside of my website. Yeah, I know it very well. Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah, so you get the idea, right? It's like this. And for those who haven't read it, it's basically like not just like a mission statement, not a like we're going to be worth this much money, but a painted picture, not literal, but like it could be literal, a really clear vision of every aspect of your business, how the media sees it, how you see it, what your employees think, how many people are there, how much revenue you bring in, everything. Mm-hmm. So I read that book. So I went to a real estate conference. I went to a big real estate multifamily conference, a little bit higher level than like a multifamily level one, right? I think it was Joe. I think it was Joe Fairless's best ever. Anyway,
Joe does a nice job with it. Michael Blanc does a nice job. So okay.
I went. This one was Joe's, and I went there, and everybody was like, like I have a big voice, like I have a big podcast, right? But I'm not like a big investor, like compared to these guys. Like what's that quote about? Like, if you're the smartest guy in the room, you need to find a different room.
You're in the wrong room, right?
Yeah, exactly. So like I got into the right room and I realized I am not living to my potential at all. Right, I am squandering my potential. Joe and you, and I mean, guys like Grant Cardone, like you're using this voice to then go and build empires. And I wasn't doing that. I was using that to, surf more. Nothing wrong with surfing. I like lifestyle, but I wanted to grow. I wanted to expand. And so anyway, I go to this event. I was all fired up. I'm like, I need to do something with it. I got to go bigger. And what also came to me is at the same time, I read a line in the book Traction that said, it is more important that you decide than what you decide. And today that's kind of like one of like the mottos of my life. Like, it's more important that you decide than what you decide. Because for years I would just be like, well, I don't know. I mean, I could build a vacation rental portfolio here in Hawaii, which I'm so glad I didn't do that, but I could do that and it would be cool. And by the way, if you're wondering why, everybody, because they shut down all vacation rentals.
There's Airbnb. Anybody that thought they were brilliant and did Airbnb is losing their property right now. Right?
Yes, there's a lot. There's going to be so many foreclosures here in Hawaii coming up next year. But I could have done that, and I was like, well, I could do this thing. I could do apartments. I could do this, and finally, like after years of like, I could do this, I read that line, and I'm like, you know what? It doesn't matter. I can find a multimillionaire, somebody happy with a great life, and in every one of those niches. So it does not matter. So it's more important that I pick one. So anyway, so kind of those two folded together.
You're a creative, okay? And so you're all big picture, and you're kind of, and okay, sorry, I interrupted. Please continue.
No, yeah. So I said, what is that going to be? What's my vision going to be? And I read this book because I knew I'd heard of it. So I read it on the hour flight from Denver, which is where the conference was, to Salt Lake City, Utah. It was a 1 hour quick flight.
Read Traction? The whole book in
Traction? No. Vivid Vision.
Vivid Vision. Okay. Cameron Herold. Yeah.
Yep. Cameron Herold, short book. I read it in an hour. I landed in Salt Lake City and I was like, oh, this is amazing. So then the 7.5 hour flight from Salt Lake City to Maui, I did nothing but worked on my Vivid Vision. And I don't know if you won't be able to see it very well here, but I won't twist it. But I actually have it on my wall now in a 4-foot high poster. I wrote a newspaper article about my company 3 years in the future. Like, he didn't exactly say how you should write yours. Like, you did it on a website, right?
No, I did. No, I did it. I did a Word document, exact same thing. And we put it on the website. We put pictures in about, and it's beautiful. I mean, I paid somebody $20,000 to help me do it, just so you know. I mean, I actually paid to have it done beautifully, and they did a great job. Yeah.
It's so valuable because all of a sudden I landed in Maui. I took off not knowing where I was headed, and I landed in Maui. When the wheels touched down, I knew exactly where I was headed. And I was the most clear, like, this is what I'm doing. And I wrote a 50, and at the time, it's funny now, I'll say this, it was the $50 Million Surfers is the article title. And it says how a small team of adventure seekers built a real estate empire, helped millions achieve financial independence, and kept their humanity intact. And it just starts literally December 31st, 2021, just like a newspaper article. And it reads like a newspaper article about my future. And what's cool about that is I said $50 million by the end of 2021. Here we are, mid to end 2020, and we're going to cross 50 million here within the next few months. And so we actually
in asset value.
In asset value, correct.
Oh, love it, man. Love it.
We wanted $50 million under management in mobile home park. We decided to go mobile home park. Thanks, man. And it just shows like you have your vision, and that it wasn't just vision, right? Vision's a huge part of it because now I get home, and this is why I love this so much.
Let me stop you for one second. Don't lose your thought. Sure. So I want to circle back to one thing you said before we move on. You said you made a decision. And guys, when you make a decision, it's not a 1 foot in, 1 foot out sort of
Yep.
thing. It is freaking done. Like the
Yep.
Latin root for the word decision means to cut off. If you're going to attack the island, you burn your ships because you're taking their ships home. That's a decision. So I just want to hammer that home. And so many people, play around with something. They toy around with multifamily or mobile home parks or single family, and they never take action because they never make a firm decision. So anyway, I hope I didn't derail you.
No,
I want you to keep
not at all.
momentum here. Okay.
I love that. And I'll just add one quote on there that Darren Hardy said. I think it was in The Compound Effect. He said, you can't be a little bit pregnant. And I love that because you're either pregnant or you're not pregnant. You're either committed or you're not committed. There is no I'm kind of committed. I'm kind of going to do this.
Even 99%. There's no 99%. It's either it's got to be done. And that's the only way it happens.
Yep.
Okay.
And so by reading that book, by doing that, by making the choice, and again, not that a lot of times, especially around Bigger Pockets now, I'm creating way too much competition for myself because I talk about mobile home parks, and then people are like, oh, Brandon's doing mobile home parks. That must be the thing to do. And I'm like, I like mobile home parks. They're good, but they're it's literally the only reason they're good for me is because I chose them. If that makes sense, right? There's benefits to them. There's downsides. They're the best investment for me because I chose them, and that's why they're the best investment, not because they're the best investment, right? The best investment is the one you choose. It's the one you commit to and decide on and go all in on. So
like it.
Anyway, so I come back, I land in Maui, I take it to my I have a guy named Ryan Murdoch. He lives here on the island. Ryan is awesome, and Ryan and I are partners on one other mobile home park. We just bought a 50 unit a few years back, and I took this to Ryan. I said, Ryan, this is my vision. This is what I want. And he's like, I want to be part of that. I want to work for that company. I was like, I know I want to work for that company. I want to be part of this where we're headed. And I showed it to a few other people yeah, that's where that's
by the way, guys, that's one of the big benefits of having a vivid vision. If you're bringing other team members in, any great leader has got to articulate a vision and get his team behind it. And that whole purpose of that, having that vivid vision is it's clearly outlined. And so people can really see it. And that this, it's a great way to communicate that vision. So anyway, cool. Love it, man.
Yeah. So that's what we did. We had our vision, and then it's just working backwards. Okay, well, how do we do this? I'm reminded of a lesson I think applies perfectly to multifamily that I actually learned from Bigger Pockets. So Bigger Pockets sold a big piece of equity of the actual company, Josh did, a few years ago to private equity. So this private equity company owns part of Bigger Pockets, and they brought in an advisor or whatever. We had a board meeting, and this guy, Mike, he's at the board. He's been through dozens of businesses, and he helped a lot of businesses grow. Very smart guy. And this is what he tells the team. We're talking all about this is how many developers we have. This is how many, staff we have. This is how much revenue we have. And so here's what our plan is. And after a while, he just holds up his hand. And he's like, guys, stop. He says, stop telling me what you have and what you're going to do with it. Tell me what's possible and what you need to get there. And that moment, I feel like that changed my life in such a dramatic way, because rather than thinking, well, this is how much money I have, this is how much time I have to be able to buy multifamily, this is how much I can do. Instead, it was, what do I want? Again, the vision. Okay, if the goal is $50 million purchased of real estate assets purchased, what do I need to get there? Well, I'd probably need somebody to help me raise money. I need a full-time, money. If I'm not going to do it, I need somebody just to run investor relations.
Investor relations, right?
Yep.
Right.
All right. So I invest, and I'm going to need an underwriter or two. I'm going to need, somebody to manage this process. I'm going to need a financial person. I'm going to need these different roles. So I worked backwards and I defined what I needed. Within 3 or 4 months, we built a team of 4 or 5 people that are awesome, just amazing people. And the acquisition fees covers everyone's salaries for the most part. So in other words, I didn't have to think I don't have the money to afford this. It's what's possible. Then what do you need to get there? Well, I need these people. And all of a sudden that's what did it. We pulled all that together by having the right team in place that aligned with the vision. And
I just have to put an exclamation mark on what you just said, because I don't think I've ever heard it articulated so succinctly. Guys, in this business, of course, you guys know it's a team sport. He just literally just defined the most important components of the team. You need someone to raise equity, an investor relations person. You need someone to do the analysis. He's saying a couple people to evaluate deals. I've got Robert, who's my CPA that done $1.5 billion worth of deals. He's that guy. asset management in some capacity, someone operationally that's going to keep an eye on things. You need a financial person to help you put the debt together and the equity, the capital stack together. So he just named all the pieces. So those of you listening, think about what your strengths are and where in that pie you might fit to put a team together. And this is what we do in our Warrior program. We align people together so they put a team together to go after this stuff like Brandon is maximizing and kicking butt with. Love it, man. I really want to just salute you for that clarity, because that's really, you think you have to get in this business and know everything, but you don't. If you have the goal in mind, then you put the pieces together. I love that, man. Absolutely love it.
You really do. You just put it together as you go. You don't have to know everything. Just
take that, but you got to take the step. You make that decision. You decide that you're going to have it, and then you take that first step. And you don't, like Dr. Martin Luther King said, you don't have to see the whole staircase. You take that first step in faith, and you just sat and thought about the pieces, and that really is, I tell you, added tremendous value to my listeners with that today, for sure. So let me ask you this. I want to ask you some questions that I ask regularly, only because we always get insights when I do. Talk about some of the challenges that you've faced, not in the podcast arena, but in the real estate space. Some of the maybe some roadblocks to watch out for. Some of the times you got your butt kicked. Sure. And maybe some of the lessons you got. If you can think of a big example, for example, or a couple of them, anything come to mind when I ask that?
Yeah, sure. I know earlier, one of the first deals we pursued, and I can call this a mistake. I don't even call it a mistake. I got my butt kicked on it, but I wouldn't call it a mistake because I had to go through this lesson. But we put a park under contract, or it was a series of parks. It was a bunch of them. And we tried to pursue them and ended up we found out some stuff during inspection that wasn't right. And our inspection dragged on too long because we weren't on top of it. We were supposed to. Mm-hmm. So we missed our window for being able to back out and get the earnest money back. And our money went hard after a certain amount of time. Anyway, I ended up losing $40,000 on that. And that was just a hard lesson. And the truth was I just didn't have the skill set yet to pursue that level of deal. Now I don't regret it. It was a great lesson, $40,000 well spent, because we bought a lot since then because of those lessons learned. But that was definitely a rough day when I was we had to back out.
What was the lesson in it? Because that is an expensive lesson, and people are like, 40. Well, I thank you for the lesson. They're probably scratching their head. What was the lesson, and how did that serve you in the future?
Yeah, the biggest thing was we needed to be more efficient with our due diligence process. We needed to do a better job of identifying before we waste a bunch of time and money underwriting, doing due diligence. We needed to underwrite better. So we had to improve our model a little bit better. And that means reaching out to more people who were smarter than us. Instead of us just saying, well, we just know this stuff, we'll figure it out. It was asking other people for help. What do you know about this? And a specific example with that one was we found out after getting under contract and going through due diligence that every single unit had their own septic tank in this park. And there was 60 of them. And it was 60 septic tanks, and they had all been in there for 40 or 50 years. So now we're looking at that's a big expense ongoing that if these things start failing now, because they don't have that big of a lifespan. And so we just didn't know what we didn't know. Right. And we would have even gotten back the earnest money and just lost a little bit of due diligence money had we been more effective with our time and kept an eye on this is the final date that we have to be backed out by.
More efficient, really checklisted and really, we use a kind of a due diligence checklist that lays out the dates and but so that's the lesson. That's a valuable lesson. Yep. Yeah. We call them seminars. We don't call them failures or setbacks. We call them seminars because that's really what they are. So let me ask you this, because you're a leader, you lead people. What do you think is a characteristic that you think every leader should possess? Probably give me the one you think is the most important. We spoke about vision. I don't know, maybe it's vision. I really think, I'll give you maybe a couple of things, but first of all, I think it is vision in a huge way. I think a leader's job is to cast vision. Because, the book Traction talks about there's visionaries and then there's integrators, which integrators are the one that do a lot of the stuff. I am not an integrator. I just know that. That's why I have Ryan Murdoch and why he's my integrator in Open Door Capital. He runs. So you use the EOS system out of Traction. We do as well. Yeah,
Yes.
oh, we love it. Yeah, we just had our meeting today and used the framework, from the book Traction. Yeah.
Yeah, we're actually hiring a consultant right now to actually get us more like succinct
no
on it,
kidding.
doing it right. Because like I felt we were like 80% there, but I want to be 100% there. I want to be like fully operating. So yeah, we got this consultant we're going to start working with to do it. But yeah, I think laying the vision, I think it's so, and it's not just like, hey everyone, we're going to $50 million this year or whatever the number is, right? It's like, it's inspiring people through vision, not just laying out a vision. Because I used to tell everyone, hey, I'm going to be rich. That's the vision. Right. That would be lame. It's how do you get everybody fired up on a vision and then aligned toward that vision? Like that's the leader's job, is aligning toward vision and having some excitement there. Because I've been a part of a lot of companies that just have terrible leadership, because like the vision is stuck in somebody's head, maybe it's kind of communicated, but all I see is like, it's just a mess, right? So I think that's a huge piece of it. And then just like empathy, I think is the other one that doesn't get talked about enough in leadership.
Emotional intelligence. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You like understand your team, what they're going through. Like I had a team member come to me the other day, just like, I'm working too much, man. I got to back off. Like I can't do it anymore. I was like, great, let's get you there. Like, how do we do this? Like, do you need a performance coach? Do we need to like look at your schedule? Like, how do we get there? And just having that, like that need to make sure that everyone's taken care of before I'm taken care of, like that empathy. So I'm a big believer in that.
Love it. Do you have any coaches or mentors that you have right now? Or I'm sure you've had some in your journey, but do you have any? I mean, you don't have to name them, but maybe talk about what they help you with. Do you have any?
Yeah, I mean, I have a performance coach. His name's Jason Juriz. He's a cool guy. He and I have been working together for like 4 years now, and I liken it to therapy more than anything else. Like Jason doesn't actually say that much on a call because I talk a lot, and so but just in talking with him, I work out these things and just the right question. The best coaches, right, are ones that just ask the right question at the right time. Like, so what's another way of thinking about that? Or does that, like, for example, there was a time, and this is true, like 3 years ago, I said. This is before going to that Joe's event. I said, I never want to raise money. I don't like raising money. And I told him that. I said, I don't like raising money. And he said, well, why? And I said, well, I've tried it a couple of times and I didn't like it. He said, well, tell me about that time. And I'm like, well, I asked two of my friends if they wanted to partner on this deal and put in money. They both turned me down and I felt bad. Well, why'd you feel bad? Because I felt like I was being rejected. Well, why don't you like being, why does that bother you? Because I want people to like me. Oh, so really the core of this is you want people to like you. Well, let's talk, like, is that, so in other words, what are you saying? I'm like, well, I guess I'm saying that when people say no, they're saying they don't like me. Is that a logical conclusion? No, it's not. And all of a sudden that mental block, that thing in my head broke because I boiled it down to the basics, rebuilt that little piece of code in my head and built it back up again. And that's what a great coach does, is they repair your code at the code level, the base level.
That example really resonated with me, brother, because that's me as well. In fact, that was one of the reasons I started the podcast. I mean, I wanted to tell my story around how my multifamily did fine through the crash. My single family is what destroyed me, but also to because I hate asking for money, and I knew I was getting back into real estate, and of course, it's done that in spades. But no, I love it, man. Oh God, you said something else I wanted to hammer home. I lost it. Anyway, so a question I love to ask, and I definitely want to hear your answer. Knowing what you know now, if you went back, how old are you now?
35.
35. Well, if you went back to 22, okay, living in the duplex, or whenever that was, what might you do differently?
Yeah, a couple things.
If anything, maybe. Yeah.
Well, there's always the. So
go bigger, faster.
Yeah, there is. There's that, and maybe I would have. And there's two things that come to mind. Number one, I would have done more. I would have done less of my own repair and maintenance along the way. Like I didn't understand the value of my own time of my intelligence. And I'm not saying I'm intelligent, but like we all have intelligence, and that is a more valuable skill than changing the toilet. And so I would have earlier on hired more people, had a bigger vision for where I wanted to go, and then found people to support that vision. Yeah. Now, granted, I started with no money and I didn't have anything to offer, so I thought I had to do the work.
Right.
So anyway, I would have probably done less of that.
Huge lesson, guys. Please, again, want to hammer an exclamation mark on that. Don't be doing your own bookkeeping unless you love it.
Yeah.
Don't be doing your own maintenance unless you love it. Think about what your time is worth and hire a line partner for these other things, because you're going to get much further, much faster.
And I love that you said unless you love it, because there are
unless you love it, right?
You love it, fine. Like, who cares? The goal of life is not to get as rich as possible. The goal of life is to have the best life possible.
Be happy.
Be happy. So So I would have done less work because I didn't love doing it. I like it. I like working with my hands sometimes, but not fixing a toilet for a tenant. Like nobody likes doing that, right?
No.
If I'm going to go do work, I'd rather go build my wife a cool bookshelf and be like, look, I made you something. So I would have done less my own work. The other thing I would have done is I would have invested outside my comfort zone. So I'm such a big believer that you have your comfort zone, you have your stretch zone, and you have your inability zone. So I would not tell somebody they should just instantly go and invest in their, hey, you're brand new to real estate. You don't know anything. Go buy a 150 unit. Go. Because that's your inability zone. Now you could partner with somebody if you really wanted to go there, and you could have a smaller piece than somebody and you'd learn, but you're really just getting into their comfort zone then, or their stretch zone. So if you live inside your comfort zone, it means you buy a house, you buy another house, maybe you buy a duplex, then go back to a house, and you just keep doing the things that you've always done because you know it. The stretch zone though is where the magic happens. So I would have scaled faster because I would have taken more risks on doing a little bit bigger deals. Is really what it comes down to.
And I mean, listen, yes, the life of your dreams is just on the other side of comfort, for sure. And very, very common. So what inspires you, man? What gets you to jump out of bed in the freaking morning? What drives you? What motivates you? You've achieved amazing success. I mean, I will tell you, forget the money, forget the podcast, the 50 million in assets, but the lifestyle you've created that you're strict with your time and your family. I mean, what drove all that? Is there a driver? Have you discovered what it is, if there is?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. I think one thing I love about real estate, and I know you're probably the same way, is real estate is a mountain that has no top. And so like there's no, you never reach it. And I think happiness comes from the climb, right? I feel like that's probably a country song.
Happiness comes from progress, never from the end result. Yeah.
Exactly. And so you never tap out. You're never at the top of the mountain. There's always something new to learn and grow, and I'm figuring out new stuff all the time. So I think that's a big piece of it. It's also like, I'm such a community and like cultural and lifestyle driven guy that like, so I little story here. I went to Nashville, Tennessee, probably 4 years ago, and I hung out with a buddy of mine. He's a Grammy award winning producer. He does a lot of big music, a really cool guy. And he's also a real estate investor. So he invited me to speak at his real estate event. So I went out there and he had a trade. He traded me. He said, "Hey, Brandon, you come out and fly out and speak at my event, and I will let you have a whole day in my studio and we'll record something. We'll have fun in my studio." Cool. I was like, that's cool. Like, when do you get to do that? Right. So I go to the studio and I hang out with him for a whole day in the studio, and we record a cool song. I wrote it for my daughter, Rosie, and gave it to my wife for a Christmas present. It was cool. But that day was such a transformative day for me because what I saw was something I had never seen before. I saw a small group of people who really and I'll use this term, loved each other. Like they were close friends working together on meaningful work. And they were all like just the best of the best in their field. Like there are multiple Grammy winners within this group, all working on their craft. And they show up when they want, they left when they wanted, they ate lunch together because they wanted to. After work, they all went out together with their families and did stuff. They just had this amazing culture. And I remember seeing that going, like, I didn't know what I wanted in work until I saw that. And I was like, I want that. And so really the last 4 years have been reverse engineering that. And so today I've got 5 people that live in Maui now, and all of our families get together almost daily.
That you work with?
Yeah.
You are freaking blessed. I was going to ask you how you do it virtually, how you create that virtually, but you don't have to. They live there. Wow.
Yeah. We have I think we have 4 here. It's me, Mike, Ryan, and Micah are all here, the 4 of us. Plus Josh Dorkin, founder of Bigger Pockets. He actually last year, 6 months ago, bought a house out here in Maui and spent the winter out here. And he's got a bunch of kids. So like we've got this. So basically now I'm doing meaningful work. That's challenging, hard, meaningful work with the best of the best I know. Like these guys are just so good. And they're so good of friends with me. And it's cool because like that drove me. It's like I wanted that. where life and work are not necessarily
Great
separated.
example. Great example. And when in that case, it's not work, man. It's play. You're playing every day.
Yeah.
Love it, man. Love it. Let me ask you, I've got one or two final questions here, but what do you think's the most courageous thing you've ever done, Brandon?
Oh, wow. That's a tough question.
And it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be specific to real estate or anything else.
Yeah. I'll say this. So we struggled for a number of years having kids. We really wanted kids. I always wanted kids. Right? We struggled for a long time. And we weren't able to have them. And at one point, a doctor told me I would never have kids. I was like, oh man, that sucks. And then I found out that there's this thing called in vitro. And so we actually did in vitro for our technically both kids. That whole process was, I mean, like this sounds, any woman listening to this is going to sound ridiculous, right? But it was so hard on me, like the whole process, right? It was my wife.
We tried it too. You have to perform on demand, and it's nothing pleasurable about it. No,
the whole thing was weird and hard, and like it was having to drive. We lived 2 hours from Seattle, had to drive up there probably 100 times within the course of 6 months. Like it was constant driving to Seattle and traffic, and just not knowing if it was going to work or not. And thank God it did work. So, I'd probably put it that one. That was tough.
That's a good one, buddy. That's a great example. That's an awesome example. All right. Last question. What's the best advice you've ever gotten?
Best advice I ever got. Let's see. I'm going to go real tangible with this one. It's more important for smaller investors that are managing their own property.
That's all right. Yeah.
Somebody once told me early on, but when I bought my very first property, he was an active investor, and he said, wait for the right tenant. He's like, the tenant, he didn't say it this way, but the tenant is the asset. In other words, the wrong tenant will destroy, no matter the best deal in the world, the wrong tenant will destroy. So even if your property is empty for longer periods, or you have to do more work to find the right tenant, wait for the right tenant. Don't get greedy. Don't get scared. Don't let scarcity drive you. Wait for the right tenant, and everything will be easier after that point for managing tenants. That guided me for the first 10 years. And had I not got that advice, I don't know if I'd be here today.
No kidding. No, that's really good advice. Really good advice. I just thought of something we didn't go there, and I would love to get your opinion on. Where do you think we're headed? I mean, you interview a lot of people on your show. You talk to a lot of hitters in the space. Where do you think we're headed in the next couple of years in this space? In this economy, in this, in the United States.
Yeah, here's the way I like to put it is you remember the old Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner cartoons?
Sure.
And the coyote would be chasing the Roadrunner, and the coyote would run off a cliff, right? And he's standing there in midair, and he's standing there, and he's not falling because he doesn't realize he's off the cliff. And so he's standing above this cliff. I think we are the coyote right now above a cliff with nothing below us. Yeah. And if we look down, that's when we're going to fall. But we haven't looked down yet. As a culture, we haven't looked. I don't think anybody realizes that we have nothing underneath us right now.
Yeah, I listened to Joe Rogan interview Peter Schiff. Okay, if you've not heard that interview,
I haven't heard that one yet.
Listen to that interview. It is so eye-opening about the causes of all this. It's not political. He doesn't like Trump or Biden. It's really just about what we've created with our government here. It's fascinating. I highly encourage you. Yeah, I highly encourage it. Well, listen, brother, this has been a real treat. I usually don't go this long, but I've really enjoyed this, man. And really appreciate you being on the show. And hopefully, I'll take my wife out to Maui one of these days and can buy you a meal. Oh yeah, I've been there. My dad used to work for Continental Airlines. We could fly out there for $30. We actually went to Honolulu. We'd camp out on what's called Nanakuli Beach in Honolulu, and when it was safe to do that. But I used to go back when we were in our teens, we would do that. So that's awesome. But anyway, thanks for being on the show. Yeah, appreciate it, man. It's great to see you.
Hey, you too. Thanks.
Rod, I know a lot of our listeners are wanting to take their multifamily investing business to the next level. Now, I know you've been hard at work helping our Warrior students do just that using our ACT methodology, which is awareness, close, and transform. Can you explain to the listeners how they can get our help?
You bet. Guys, we've been going nonstop for 3 years, building an amazing community of like-minded people. And our coaching students, which we call our Warriors, have had extraordinary results. They've purchased thousands and thousands of units. And last year we did over 1,000 units with our students. And we're looking to grow this group and take it to the next level. We're looking for people who want to follow a proven framework that's really step by step, and then leverage our systems and network to raise equity, to find and close deals, and to build partnerships nationwide. Now, our warrior community is finding success in any market cycle. So if you're interested in finding out more about how you can become more of our incredible network and take advantage of the incredible opportunities that are coming very soon, apply to work with us at mentorwithrod.com or text CRUSH to 41411. That's mentorwithrod.com or text CRUSH to 41411.